Well, hello again, traders, and welcome out. This is Ankit from Maverick Currencies here, and this is a market roundup for Monday, August the 15th. Well, there's a lot to talk about as we got a lot of movement overnight, and this is where we need to kind of take a deep dive in and take a look at what caused the move and what we need to focus in the next 24 hours. And at the end, we'll take a look at our picks for overnight and tomorrow as we go into some key data. So let's do a quick market analysis and see what the market picture looked like today. So the market continues to rally. So the equity markets, as you can see, continues to be on this uptrend. And so far, we are not really seeing any sort of meaningful pullback, and every little rally has been confirmed with a continuation. So the sentiment in the markets are pretty strong, and same thing in the World Stock Index, a little lagging behind the U.S. markets, but it's on the same path. The equities look strong, but we got a bit of a mixed picture of other places, just like. Looking at the crypto markets, we did pull back. So, I mean, it looked promising that it wants to rally. And you can see that it's just failing once again. So this is the kind of price action you need to be a little bit more cautious about and use a bit more, confirmation for some sort of follow through. And this time, it's actually falling right back below. We actually got a bit pullback in the gold market as well, down 1.28%. And oil was also down 3.18%. So the big headline last night was that the equity markets stayed on the same path, but the US dollar and the yen really outperformed. So those are the two currencies that we will be primarily looking at and take a look at what kind of follow-through we can expect in the next 24 hours. And one of the things that we got some bad data from China last night. And if you look at some of the Chinese numbers, the data was actually a lot more disappointing. The industrial production, the retail sales, they all sort of dipped lower, and they were way missing the expectations. So that again is not putting a promising picture for growth, as these Chinese numbers are important to keep track of the growth overall. So the market outlook remains a +2, but I think if you're looking at currency markets, this is where focus on relative strength of weakness instead of correlation, because a day like today was not what we, a correlated move. The dollar went up, the yen went up, so did the market. So this is a kind of a unique conditions where just follow what's really happening instead of trying to make sense of, the correlation. So looking at this week, again, this is a heavy week, and I was surprised to get such a movement last night because we have a lot to go through in the next 24 to 48 hours. Especially tomorrow, we have the Canadian CPI figures. Tonight, we have policy meeting minutes from Australia. And again, these are the ones that we need to watch out for, because remember what happened with the US CPI just a week ago. Big move once those inflation numbers started to cool down. So if the same kind of scenario plays out with Canada's number, I would expect a very similar price action. So I think Canadian dollar looks very important to take a look at in the next 24 hours. Tomorrow night, we also have the RBNZ rate statement. Again, they're expected to raise rates by 50 basis points. But again, that's not enough. Remember, we have seen a lot of these central banks hike rates, but that doesn't result into the currency go higher. So we can't really take these rate hikes with a face value. I think what's the important thing to take a look at is what's in how hawkish or how dovish the comments are for further rate hikes. So that's really where the currency is likely to find a move, not off this little rate hike, but what the continuation looks like. I think right now the expectation is that the RBNZ is going to be a lot more hawkish, but again, if those disappoint, the price action can reverse pretty fast. So let's do a quick currency analysis and take a look at the percentage moves today, see where the biggest movement was and what we need to focus on. Cryptocurrency world, you can see that everything was down. So we actually can't really pinpoint. Litecoin was really the worst one. But outside of that, the Ethereum, down 1.5%. Bitcoin was down 1%. So, a small pullback percentage-wise. But definitely not what you want to look for if you're looking for a follow-through. Now, currency market, this is where a lot of the action was, and especially if you were in the right pairing, like the dollar and the yen versus the Aussie and the Kiwi. I mean, we actually had almost a 2% move at one point in between these pairings. And again, in the currency world, those are big movements. So whenever you get these big movements, it's always important to take a look at it, especially Aussie and Kiwi looked really good last week. as we close off the Friday, you know, these two currencies were actually about on the verge of breakout, and then here we are getting a meaningful pullback. So something we need to pay attention to. And as the yen and the dollar resurface, I mean, that's another area we need to pay attention to, just so we make sure we're in the right side of the markets. In between, the Swiss franc, euro, and pound was not a big mover. So one of the key thing to notice today was that, you know, we talk about this negative correlation. So one thing goes up, the other one goes down. And we can see that there's a negative correlation between euro and Swiss franc, meaning Swiss franc is actually stronger than the euro. So when the euro goes down, the Swiss franc, you know, it's not really going down at the same time. You get the negative correlation. Now, the dollar and the yen, most of the time, the dollar and yen has been acting as a negative correlation where one goes up, the other goes down. This time around, they both went up. So that's one thing we need to pay attention to. Is this a one-off event, or is this a trend-changing move? And that's something we always need to focus on when we get these big pivots. And we need to see what kind of price action we can expect and what kind of confirmation we can get. So is this a one-time event, or is this going to be something that continue this week? So something we'll pay attention to. But yeah, keep a close eye on this dollar and yen, because that's where the correlation or negative correlation kind of comes in. So as far as the velocity score goes, again, we got a whole different picture of what we get on Friday. On Friday, Aussie was strong, Kiwi was strong. You know, we got the nice trend score there. We got a nice little momentum score there. And now we got a big pullback. So this is where big shifts. You know, we got the yen and the dollar, they moved on the right side. The Aussie and the Kiwi, they move on the left side. The Canadian dollar was managed to pair some of the losses, but again, something we need to pay attention to in the next 24 hours. Euro remains weak, and again, doesn't matter if this gets a little bit more push to the upside. All these little bear rallies are just a shorting opportunity. Again, the outlook for euro hasn't really changed, and even with the pound, we got when we get a nice little up day, or I mean, this was a mildly positive day, I think I would need to take a look at that as a bear rally. And I think that's where the trend score is telling us is that pound and Kiwi is actually still in this negative territory. So in the meantime, when other currencies take charge, you know, we see not a whole lot of price action. But again, the focus when it goes back onto these currencies, I think that continues to be a bit of a good short. So let's talk about possible trades in the next 24 hours. Take a look at some charts and see what we can expect or where we should be paying attention to. So let's just start with the dollar, because I know dollar was the one that a lot of traders were caught off guard or by surprise. And again, this is one of the things that I've been tracking and I've been talking about, you know, the expectations. So since this US CPI release came out last week, you can see that really deteriorated the outlook for the dollar. But as you can see at this point, we actually have almost a full recovery. I mean, we're a little bit shy off of that, but we are very close to making a full recovery. Now, if you take a look at the expectation, you know, despite that talk, or despite that CPI number, I mean, the expectation for a bit of an aggressive rate hike is still on the table, about 40%. So again, if the expectation for this is to really fall apart, then we should see these things fall apart too, but we didn't. I mean, same thing, if you take a look at the bond yields, I mean, if we look at the bond yields where we were off that CPI release and where we are right now, you can see that we didn't really make new lows. We actually just recovered. So the yields are not falling apart. This is telling us that, you know, we can't really go with that dovish outlook for the Fed yet. I mean, we still need the Fed still remains dovish. So as long as the Fed is hawkish, as long as the Fed is still hawkish, they're looking to raise rates. I think the expectation for dollar or the trajectory for dollar remains on the strong side. So and at the same time, we have currencies like euro and pound that's been so weak. So that doesn't make a good case for dollar to stay that weak. So I think the dollar is in a good position here after breaking out. You know, I was watching this little downward resistance line over here, and we actually have made a nice little reversal off this area. So I think at this point, this is a nice little bull flag pattern here. So I think the expectation for dollar to go higher is a little bit higher in this next 24 hours. And it's the same thing with the yen. I mean, take a look at yen. Yen had a massive move out of this little breakout point. It did pull back right into the range. But notice that now the range is slowly carving out to the upside. So I think both the yen and dollar looks a little bit promising to me. And remember, yen doesn't need to follow correlation because it didn't really follow correlation when it was falling apart. So it's important to take a look at the price action. At this point here, we actually established a little higher, higher highs. We got a higher high here. We got the higher lows over here. And we can expect a higher high. So I still like the yen to the upside. Now it's just a matter of picking the right timing for it and right currencies for it. So those are the two that I still think we can have a little continuation for our chart. They all point out to the upside. So what looks the weakest? As you can see, the dollar, when the dollar gets stronger, it really hurts the outlook for some of the growth currencies. So here we are, Aussie daily chart. It was actually staying in a nice little uptrend. And then here you go. Well, I have this downward trend line set up on this currency basket, and you can see we are actually falling right back lower. Now, Kiwi, same thing. We got a very nice, convincing breakout. And at this point, it's in the process of retesting that level. So I think I'll still be wary of Kiwi until tomorrow when we get the RBNZ rate statement. I think that'll be the better time to look for a move. But I think until then, I'm actually better off looking at currencies like the Aussie or even the CAD. You can see that the CAD has really turned its trajectory lower. The only difference is that it's really choppy this time. But you can see this morning, actually last night, the CAD was equally weak, and it actually caught a nice little bounce this morning. So it looks like that there's a little bit of buying that comes in the morning. I mean, you can see the exact same thing here. We can get the exact same thing here. Some rallies in the morning. Some buying in the morning, but overall, I think the CAD still is in the trajectory of going lower instead of going higher. And especially if the CPI figures come out a lot weaker, I think that again, puts a little bit more dovish outlook on the CAD from the Bank of Canada to continue on that path of raising rates. So again, something to pay attention to. If you take a look at the Canadian yields, so you can see that the yields are kind of going flatline for the short term. I mean, the 2-year yields are still holding up. So if the 2-year yields actually sort of take a hit after the CPI numbers, then that would be a signal. I think the reason why we are not seeing an aggressive move in the CAD because the overall short-term yields are still holding up, meaning that we are not really seeing a big expectation for dovish Bank of Canada. I think the outlook still remains pretty positive for Bank of Canada. So it's important to take a look at these yields because that will give you an indication of the central banks and what the outlook is. I mean, going into the Kiwi on the outlook here, same thing. It's kind of holding it here. So we're not really seeing the yields fall apart, but if the yields start to pull back, I think that's a bit weaker for the currency. So in the next 24 hours, the pairs that I think I would like to take a look at, look at Aussie dollar. Beautiful pullback right off the resistance. The last time we got that nice little pullback off that 200-day moving average was back in May till June, and we got a nice little pullback. And here we are, broke out, nice little pullback. So the difference between here and here is that the equity markets are falling at this time too. And at this time, I like the fact that it's pulling on its own and not really needing help from the equities. So this I was watching on the upside, but I think at this point, watch out for, one of the things to take a look at is that this is almost reversing the CPI release numbers. This is where the CPI release came out, and this is where we end up. So I like the fact that they're all retracing all of those gains, which means that there could be a little further downside, especially if the market can get a little down tick, or if the dollar stays strong. I think those pairs looks decent to me. Same thing with the Kiwi. I'll be taking a look at Kiwi tomorrow, but again, very similar trajectory. Now, dollar CAD made an impressive move today, and I think something I'm paying attention to. Look at the nice reversal that took place. So we were down, down, and down. And this is a pair, actually, that has actually made a full recovery post that CPI release. So again, that number is totally reversed, which I think at this point, there's further upside potential than downside. So in this pattern here, 120 at 80, again, this is where the support is. If we can actually break above that 129.40 area, the next level of resistance can easily start to get into this 130 area. So a nice pullback, nice reversal on this long-term chart. I would love to kind of see this catching traction more to the upside. So dollar CAD goes on the top of the list, especially combining with the US CPI figures tomorrow. Aussie dollar looks good. And let's actually take a look at some of the yen pairs too, because if you really, look at technicals here, what we have is a complete change of trend. We got a rally in CAD yen. We tested at 105 and we pulled back to 103. So, this is in a trajectory of going lower. The stop goes over high here. the breakdown goes over here. So, but what if it breaks down further from here? I think this can easily catch more traction and get towards that 100 area. Same thing I talked about euro yen in the currency room. As you can see that it's easily rolling over. So I like these yen crosses rolling over to the downside. And it depending on which currency you're really paying attention to. I mean, we get moments where one is better than the other. You can see that the dollar versus yen was actually leading it till overnight and this morning, and before we got that big reversal. So in this case, the dollar crosses were actually better off during the day today. So pay attention to this one. If this stays in this positive correlation, then we just have to pick one or the other. But if there's a negative correlation, if one goes up and the other goes down, then we need to pay attention to what's really giving us a leading information. But on a daily chart, a lot of these yen crosses actually looks pretty good. I mean, it's a matter of rolling over. Some are already rolling over, and some are in the process of rolling over. So I still like euro yen. I like CAD yen for tomorrow. 102 is a very important level of support. And going through the list here, I think dollar yen is just keep an eye on the dollar yen just to give you an outlook on what's happening. We still like the dollar CAD on the upside. So very good, decent pairs. And outside of the dollar and the yen, I still like euro on the short side. I mean, maybe we're just catching a little bit of bounce in the short term, but if it breaks these levels, I mean, on Euro Aussie, we have the support here. On Euro CAD, we have a support here. So if we get that support to the downside, then I think the outlook looks much more weaker to the downside here. And same thing, Euro Dollar, you can see that it's actually very quickly fallen lower off the moving average here. So at this point, I think this is on a trajectory to go lower as well. So this could be the case where if the dollar gets stronger, everything kind of gets weaker against it. Even Swiss franc, you can see bouncing a little nicely off this 200 moving average. So I'm actually still, I don't mind taking a look at this either, depending on if the euro or the Swiss franc is taking a lead. But so far, I think the dollar crosses look promising along with the yen crosses. So that's what really I'll be paying attention to. And again, if you're looking for catalysts tomorrow, we have the Canadian CPI. That'll be due at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. So pay attention to that one. I think USD momentum is shifting to the upside, so watch out for that shift. And then again, euro remains weak. So that's the market recap. We'll be in touch. Till then, take care and happy trading.